Which brings us to our fourth storyteller. Dani Ausen is here to share a story about, well, nerds and gaming, but a little bit different from Jordan's. Take it away, Dani.
In this reality, I have brown hair. I am a medium height, which you cannot tell on YouTube, but you can see that my makeup is on point. But on another plane, my skin would be more red than olive, like a blush all over my body. My dark hair and green eyes would be similar, but horns would curl back from my forehead like a goat. And this outfit would not be appropriate. I would be wearing leather armor custom fitted to accommodate my semi-prehensile tail. Now, in what reality do I look like that? In the world of Dungeons and Dragons. So, based on that opener, you might think that I was kind of a weird kid, but other than my carefully concealed love of comic books and sci-fi novels, I was typical. I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa as one quarter of a loving family. I was a great student, a standout in my art classes, and a good Catholic girl who went to church every Sunday. On the weekend, though, I would rush home early from nights with friends, and I would beg for the family PC where I would log on to role-playing websites. It was not that kind of role-playing. It wasn't Dungeons and Dragons either, though. I would create superhero personas, and I would participate in complex hours-long games with people whom I would never meet, but whom I would consider some of my closest friends. See, in those stories, I got to be somebody stronger, somebody braver, somebody with special abilities and challenges, and for a creative teenager, that was really addictive. High school went on, though, and my priorities shifted. I ended up leaving roleplay behind for the real world. I went to college, I got a degree, and I found a sci-fi loving guy to start a life with. One day, I was sitting in the house that I shared with my then fiance, Ken, when he suggested that maybe we should start a Dungeons and Dragons game with our friends. Would you want to play? He asked me. Hell no, was my response. I just remember all the hours and the obsession, and as an adult, I did not think that I had time for that anymore. About once a week, though, our friends would come by and I would overhear them creating their druids and warlocks and taking them out into the forest to kill some goblins, and damn it, it just sounded like too much fun. So that is when I became Yara Yegaroff. Now, you are thinking to yourself, this woman is going to talk a lot about rolling dice, but for the purposes of this story, I am going to stay out of the finer points of Dungeons and Dragons, and you are very welcome. Here's one thing you need to know, though. This game is all about the characters. Like Yara, for instance. Yara was half human and half devil and all attitude, but you would be attitude all the time too if everyone called you evil. Yara was a rogue and an assassin, which meant that she was very quiet, very deadly, and an absolute pill to everybody at all times. The party was amazing. We were a bunch of 20 and 30-something creatives. We'd get together on the weekend, open up some beers, and get to work. There was one standout, though. Kat is a non-binary person who at the time used she, her pronouns, but now goes by they, them pronouns. And Kat dove into Dungeons and Dragons the way that Kat dives into life, which is to say, with absolutely no caution whatsoever. Kat's characters were constantly running headlong into battle and getting killed. They had already lost 2 by the time I joined the party. As the game continued, Ken, who was, and please stay with me after I use this term, our dungeon master, he had an amazing idea on how to flesh out our characters. He asked us to do little bits of writing each week. And so Yara started writing letters to a character I made up, a guy I called Malkin, and it became clear that Yara had a lot of baggage. So when Kat lost yet another character to battle, I suggested that maybe Kat should play Malkin and we could write our backstories together. Kat agreed, and I was so excited. I felt that same creative tug that I felt in high school, but this time I was going to be role-playing with one of my closest and most creative friends. So Kat became Malkin Faulkner, a mountain of a man, a barbarian with a flaming sword, and Yara's suddenly not-so-estranged boyfriend. And the letter writing continued, and it turned into vignettes, and then turned into vignettes. Here's another thing that you guys need to know about Dungeons and Dragons. Magical items. They appear in the game and they have special properties like a dagger that returns to you after you throw it, or a ring that lets you talk to animals. These always make the game more interesting. Like one very memorable Saturday morning brunch session. We had barely dug into the game and our blueberry mojitos when a very innocuous looking belt appeared on the scene. Now, most of us poked and prodded at this, but left it alone, very cautious. But remember, there was someone in our party who lacked caution. So Kat's new character, Malkin, ran right over to that belt, picked it up, and wrapped it around his waist. After the deed was done, Ken let us know that this was a belt of gender swap, and the burly male character that my character had fallen in love with was now a burly female. And you guys, I cried for 2 days. I could not figure out why I was so angry. This was not real. All that had happened was that my fake character's fake boyfriend was now a fake woman instead of a fake man. I was so angry, but Ken allowed Kat to reverse the effects of the belt, and things went back to normal. But I could tell that something was different. Years later, I can see that the game that I loved because it allowed me to escape reality was now smacking me in the face with a truth that I had buried. I had never considered myself anything other than a typical straight woman. I mean, all straight women are attracted to other women, right? Even when I was 15 and I was terrified of being a lesbian, I dismissed those questions. I didn't know any gay people. I had no role models. All I knew about being gay was that it was wrong and that I was going to be alone and unhappy. So I moved on. I dated men. I met the man who would become my husband. I loved him very much. These complicated new feelings were not part of my plan. All that time, I had thought that what I was feeling was the byproduct of an all-consuming creative project, the echoes of a love between two fictional characters that I had been pouring my heart into. In reality, though, the feelings that had actually brewed were between myself and my co-author. I confessed to my husband immediately. I was ready to forget that those feelings ever happened. Ken knew me really well, though, and we both knew that that was not going to work. When I think of my life at that point, I imagine myself walking down a path, not unlike the Forest Trails of a Dungeons & Dragons game. I was collecting all of the magical items that I needed to be happy. I had an amazing husband, I had a great job, and a beautiful home. I knew that if I just kept trucking, putting one foot in front of the other, that I was going to have it all. But I had to stop and listen. I never thought that Dungeons & Dragons could be a turning point for me, but once those questions had stirred up, I began to hear the tittering of the little birds of doubt. It was true. I loved my husband very much, but some part of me had always known that it was not the kind of love that a wife should have for her husband. I struggled really hard to come to terms with that point. I remember one day I was sitting in Ken's car with him and I was bawling my eyes out for the billionth time. And he looked at me and he said, I wish that everybody that thought that being gay was a choice could be here right now and see this. In the end, we decided together that Ken should have the marriage that he really deserved and that it was time for me to be who I really am. And I am really not a straight woman. So I came out as bisexual in my 30s. And when I did, I discovered that I am not a unique case. There are a lot of people who bury the idea of being queer and return to it later in life. And once I found my way there, I also found a lot of love and support. Ken is no longer my husband, but he will always be my family, and we remain very close. And Kat, through more patience and kindness than I could imagine, supported me first through our friendship and then through a deep love, which is every bit as beautiful and exciting today as it was in those first pages that we wrote together. My coming out had a second dimension, though. I am also someone who found the courage to start over again. It's like in Dungeons & Dragons. Players create very lifelike characters, and it feels sometimes real, but with time comes change. Maybe your paladin falls off a cliff, or your wizard defeats the big bad and you lives out happily ever after. As a player and a creator, you have to know when it's time to rip up that character sheet and move on. Real life is the same way. Once you're walking down that path of daily life, it can be hard to tell if the progress you're making is taking you where you want to go. I definitely do not have all of the answers, but I am somebody who found the courage to tear up the character sheet of my own life and start over again down another path. And in doing so, I found my authentic self in ways that I never thought were possible. So, in life and in Dungeons and Dragons, sometimes the best part is the thrill of starting over and finding a brand new adventure. So grab your swords and let's go fight some goblins. Thanks, guys.